Hi, I'm Jack.
Sean?
We're reviewing The Amazing Spider-Man. People have been giving this movie hell because it came out just 5 years after the last Spider-Man movie. And also, it comes right before The Dark Knight Rises, so I feel like a lot of people have kind of been forgetting it. But you know what? I loved this movie.
Well, this movie has Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy.
And that's something I like, is Gwen Stacy's in this. You know, she was the original girlfriend of Peter Parker in the comics, so I think that's awesome.
I like how they used the main villain in the first one this time. They didn't just start off with Green Goblin.
Yeah, they used the lizard, and that's really neat. They didn't really introduce his family like they do in the comics, which I feel would have kind of benefited the movie. But as it was, I thought he was a very good villain. Dennis Leary was great. You know what? I'm not even going to name off every person that was great, because all the actors were excellent. My favorite thing about this movie was definitely the direction. The director did a stupendous job with this movie. Just everything about the way it looked, everything about the way it was filmed felt great.
I thought this was really funny. At the end, I looked to see who the director was, and it was Mark Webb.
Yeah, people have been making jokes about that left and right. The color scheme of this movie is stupendous. I like the Spider-Man costume. I think that it's really well designed, and I like it better than the Spider-Man costume from Spider-Man 1 through 3.
This one looks more homemade, like he made it out of the materials that he would have actually had.
And I think it's more visually appealing. I think it's brighter colors. I don't know, I think it looks better.
I liked how in this movie they used web shooters instead of just having it like magically come out of his wrist.
Yes, I love the web shooters. Thank goodness. And every time he shoots him, you see smoke coming out of him.
And like a
It's
red
so
light
cool.
go off. So.
I thought it was interesting that they took into the idea of why he became Spider-Man and made it with the villain. You know, cross-species genetics. I thought that was neat, that they tied in his origin story with the villain. There's a cool scene when he's in the sewers with Lizard. Well, he's hunting down Lizard. Well, for one, he's trying to get a photo for the Daily Bugle, which is awesome. But also, he kind of builds this web, and he's kind of seeing which of the strands kind of vibrate. It's just like a spider. It's really neat.
I liked the way the Lizard looked in this movie.
I was really pleasantly surprised. I was afraid I was going to really not like the fact that he had no snout. It turned out really well. I thought the Lizard had a great design.
The Lizard can also talk with, like, the mind of Dr. Connors.
I thought the Lizard was a very real threat for Spider-Man to face. The music. I have to comment on the music. The music wasn't what I was expecting. It had a very different tone to it. It was very unlike other superhero films' music I'd ever heard before. It really took a daring approach to it, and I think it really paid off. This was a very unique soundtrack. I
don't want to say that this movie is dark, but it's darker than the other Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, it has a darker tone. Spider-Man's 1 through 3 had their cheese. They had their fair amount of cheese. But this movie isn't really that cheesy at all. It takes itself pretty seriously, with the exception of one thing that I thought was so cool and so true to the comics. You see Spider-Man making little quips at the villains and everything, and humiliating them and making fun of them.
One of my favorite scenes was the scene where he's confronting the car thief.
Oh man, that's a great scene. You kind of see that in the trailer when he's making fun of the guy trying to steal a car, but that's a great scene. It's one of my favorites. I thought it was interesting in this movie. You know, in the other Spider-Man movies, you could tell he was getting battered because he was getting weaker. You could tell he was getting tired. But in this movie, you know, he actually gets a huge scratch across his chest. He gets huge claw marks across his chest because of Lizard. You know, he's getting visibly hurt. He gets shot in the leg. It really makes you feel that he's not invulnerable. His webbing can fail. His body can fail, and it's something that really brings a true sense of danger to the film.
In this movie, they deal more with the character Flash Thompson than they did in the other ones.
Martin Sheen was a good Uncle Ben. I thought he was very well cast into that part. I think Sally Field doesn't really look the part of Aunt May, but she plays it very well, so I think she did a good job. The movie is very well written. I would say this is as well written as probably Spider-Man 2. And probably better written than Spider-Man. I think the origin story is much better, and that they deal with the parents. You know, they actually take into account the parents. They're never even mentioned in the other Spider-Man films, and that looks like it's going to be a big part of the following films.
In this movie, Peter definitely has a different personality than in the other ones.
I agree. In the other ones, he was a stereotype of a nerd. In this one, he's more of just an outcast. I think it's very much more believable. He's just socially awkward, and he's an outcast, doesn't really fit in. I think that's really, really cool. It's a very modern take on everything.
And he's still really smart.
He had to really get used to his powers. You got the feeling that Peter Parker just picked up on him in the other movies, And I know I'm comparing it to the other movies a lot, but you can't help it. But anyway, in this movie, you can tell he's getting used to his powers, and he's breaking things and messing things up all the time because he just doesn't know how to control his powers yet. He beats some people up on a subway train, not meaning to. It seems like he's hypersensitive in this movie, which is interesting to me. You could tell that he was just noticing all these things and it was driving him crazy.
He always seemed to react to the slightest things. Like with the spider sense, he could sense things going on behind him, and he would react right before they happened.
Neither movie really mentioned the spider sense, but this movie kind of made it seem like he had it more. Something would happen behind him, he'd just react to it. There was a stupid scene that I'm sure you've heard about by now, but he throws a football at like the goalpost and it bends, and that's after they've announced everything about Spider-Man in the news. I thought that was kind of dumb, but overall I am very impressed with this movie.
I really liked how Dennis Leary played Gwen Stacy's father. I thought he did a really good job.
Dennis Leary was good. He looks just like Willem Dafoe. It's so weird. I'm going to give The Amazing Spider-Man a 9.75 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. I thought the directing in particular was excellent. I really, really enjoyed it.
I'm also going to give The Amazing Spider-Man a 9.75 out of 10. There were little things, but this is one of the best movies I've seen this year. So.
Alright, that's our review. Thank you for watching, and happy Independence Day.